In Taiwan, a Gulf factory blaze claims at least 10 lives.
Fire department officials speculate the fire was caused by a chemical explosion. More details on this later in the news. Good evening, I am Gianna Llanes.
I am Nina Richie, Alagao-Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Now for the headlines. The Marcos administration sees lowered prices for rice in the Philippines this harvest season. Philippines joins the United States and Japan in a trilateral meeting. Nagorno-Karabakh exodus begins as Armenia warns of possible ethnic cleansing. France has decided to withdraw its ambassador from Niger. And let's find out who won big in the 2023 Asian Games. A small rollback on pump price is set to take effect tomorrow. According to oil firms' advisories, motorists will have to pay 20 centavos less for diesel and gasoline per liter. Meanwhile, kerosene price per liter will go down by 50 centavos. This ends the consecutive weeks of fuel price hikes in the country.
The pilot run of the updated K-10 curriculum begins today following the successful completion of teacher training by the Department of Education, or DepEd. DepEd has confirmed that the necessary funds to support the implementation have been provided to the 35 participating schools. The purpose of this pilot test is to identify challenges and gaps in the Matatag curriculum, which will be crucial in refining it before its full implementation across all schools in the academic year of 2024 to 2025.
PhilHealth has temporarily suspended all online transactions due to a recent cyber attack over the weekend. PhilHealth Senior Vice President Israel Francis Vargas has confirmed that transactions will now be conducted manually over the counter while the agency thoroughly investigates the incident. Members and their dependents are required to bring copies of their data records and any supporting documents since the systems are currently offline. Vargas assures that the public will be promptly informed once the investigation is concluded and online services are restored.
The Marcos administration sees lower prices for rice in this country this coming harvest season. The Department of Agriculture, DA, notes that the rice supply in the country is expected to stabilize. DA data shows that there is an uptick in the country's rice production this year, paving the way for lowered market prices. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. clarifies that the country has a sufficient supply of rice. He underscores that the country's agriculture system must be reformed to boost the sector's production.
Philippines, the United States, and Japan reaffirmed their trilateral cooperation on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly. Bernadette Manuel for the report.
Foreign Affairs Chief Enrique Manalo met with U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken and Japan Foreign Minister Kamikawa Yoko on the sidelines of the 78th edition of the United Nations General Assembly in New York. According to the Department of Foreign Affairs, or DFA, the three ministers had discussed possible agreements for a trilateral cooperation. Blinken previously said that the three countries believe their collaboration could produce benefits to maintain peace and stability in the region. Meanwhile, Kamikawa underscored the vital role of promoting a multi-layered collaboration among allies and like-minded nations to uphold order. Earlier this month, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. held talks with U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris and Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida in Indonesia to address maritime security in the South China Sea. Bernadette Manuel reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Chinese Coast Guard vessels had tailed Filipino fisherfolk amid a resupply mission of the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources, or BFAR, in the Scarborough Shoal. The agency's personnel are on board BRP Datu Bancao to deliver food, water, and fuel to the fisherfolks plying the contested waters. They've distributed 60 tons of fuel to more than 50 mother boats or Filipino fishing vessels. BFAR notes that 4 Chinese Coast Guards patrolled around the waters, sending airwaves ordering BRP Datu Bancao to immediately leave the area.
China has reportedly placed a floating barrier in the West Philippine Sea, obstructing Filipino fishermen from operating within the Philippines Exclusive Economic Zone or EEZ. Chinese Coast Guard vessels have been observed installing multiple buoys in various areas of the Scarborough Shoal, a region within the Philippines EEZ as defined by the 2016 arbitral ruling. The Chinese vessels have also been chasing away fishing boats, preventing them from accessing areas claimed by Beijing. Although China's embassy in Manila has yet to issue any statements, the Philippines strongly condemns this act, emphasizing its detrimental impact on the livelihoods of Filipino fishermen.
The Philippine government has officially appealed to the United Nations for support in its bid for a non-permanent seat on the UN Security Council. Foreign Affairs Secretary Enrique Manalo delivers a statement on behalf of President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. during the 78th session of the UN General Assembly in New York City. He highlights the Philippines' dedication to peace building, demonstrated through its adherence to Security Council resolutions and active work in the BARMM. The application for the non-permanent seat was initially presented in May of this year. Once approved, the Philippines will actively participate in debates and votes on various issues pertaining to international law and the maintenance of global peace. Coming up, Xi Jinping calls for an alliance with South Korea. Tensions between Kosovo and Serbia have escalated over a terrorist attack. And Iran looks to revive the U.S. nuclear deal. Stay tuned, Mata ng Agila International will return for more global news.
Best Public Affairs Program. And the star goes to Open for Business Net 25.
It is a signal to the world that we are open for business.
Open for Business with Cesar Vallejos. Every Sunday, 9 p.m.
Sa dami ng problema, parang ang hirap ng huminga, di ba? Minsan, pakiramdam mo, hopeless na. Kaya dapat ihayag ng saloobin, himayin ang hinaing, alamin ang pwedeng gawin. Mag-reality check tayo.
Ang Real Talk ng Bayan.
Dear Bossling and Tally.
Ako po si Jenny, bossing. Tawagin niyo na lang akong Becky.
Lola, kain ho tayo.
Huwag na kayo magulo! Bakit parang bahay lang natin yung umaalog ng ganito? Bakit? Ano ang kailangan nyo? Lola, baby!
Yung pong pagboboxing ninyo.
Ang pagkakaalam ko, akin pa rin itong bahay na to.
Mismo.
Love, Bossling, and Tali. Tuwing linggo, alas 6 ng gabi dito lang sa Net 25.
Talagang binaril na yung claim nila sa 9-9.
Yung kanang kamay, pinakamayan ang Pilipinas, pero yung kalimang kamay, sinasaksak naman tayo.
Hindi tayo naghahanap ng basagulo, pero nagpo-protesta kami. Ngayon,
Tayo yung iniipit tapos sinasabi nila, nangako tayo.
Baka magulat na lang tayo, baka may ilabas po ang China na
May
meron silang
resibo.
resibo pala.
Sama-sama nating harapin ang mga issue at problema ng bayan. Dito lang sa ASPN, Lunes hanggang Biyernes, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. sa Net 25.
Welcome back to Mata ng Agila International. Chinese President Xi Jinping says China and South Korea must meet each other halfway as ties continue to strain under pressure of the United States. Xi tells South Korean Prime Minister Han Duck-soo their countries should integrate supply chains and increase economic communication. Xi also calls for mutual respect, asserting that China and South Korea are friendly neighbors and inseparable business partners. Analysts believe Xi is becoming more frustrated with the growing alliance of the U.S., Japan, and South Korea. The United States is reportedly pressuring security partners, including South Korea, the Netherlands, Taiwan, and Japan, to comply with curbing the sale of China's advanced chips. Meanwhile, a senior government official says the office of President Yoon Suk-yeol is now working to arrange Xi's state visit. Sources estimate Xi's visit could not happen this year due to time constraints, but the meeting may push through next year.
A growing concern has intensified in recent weeks after Chinese economy retreated to deflation. China's economy slowdown fueled fears over the weakening renminbi, soft consumption, and unstable levels of local government debt. Sources say unemployment has gotten so bad that Beijing has stopped publishing the data. The country's real estate crisis is also deepening, and exports are in a slump. And for the first time in decades, analysts say the world's second economy has the problem. Economists warn that if Xi Jinping's government does not fix the problem, China's economy slowdown will soon reverberate across Asia.
China's relationship with the European Union is at a make-or-break moment as the EU's trade chief asks for more openness and fairer trade practices from Beijing.
Meanwhile, European companies are concerned with China's direction of travel.
Executive Vice President of the European Commission, Valdis Dombrovskis, aims to highlight this during his 4-day trip to China. The visit comes less than 2 weeks after the European Commission opened an investigation into Chinese subsidies for electric car manufacturers. This concern comes as data showed a 400 billion euro trade deficit with China back in 2022. European officials have stressed their plan is not to decouple from China, but simply to de-risk itself from outside dependency. The EU argues that Chinese support for electric vehicles or EVs is creating distortions in the European market, creating an imbalance between Chinese gigafactories and European automakers. One of the areas where the EU is looking to de-risk is the electric vehicle sector after the share of such China-made cars sold in Europe rose to 8% this year. European officials have said the slice could reach 15% by 2025. EV market developments are particularly significant ahead of a European deadline to end the sale of new diesel and petrol cars by 2035.
Many are questioning their position in the country. They're asking themselves whether what many saw as a win-win relationship in past decades could become a lose-lose dynamic in the coming years.
European automakers set up factories and have up to 95% of their whole production value chain in China. De-risking is an economic measure that minimizes strategic dependencies for a select number of products targeted to maintain open autonomy within their native markets.
This means European companies struggle to understand their compliance obligation, and that's a factor that significantly decreases business confidence and deters new investments in China.
Hundreds of people waving European Union flags rallied in central London on the weekend, calling for Britain to rejoin the EU. The National Rejoin March wants to reverse the Brexit deal, which saw Britain leave the bloc. Anna Kui has the details.
Backers of the movement say leaving the EU was a huge mistake. British citizens voted in favor of Brexit in a 2016 referendum. An exit deal took effect in 2021, with a review set for 2025. Pro-European protester Rachel Ashley says it's time to correct that mistake. Most politicians say it is no longer an issue. They say there is no case for returning to the EU. But others in the crowd on the weekend say eventually Britain will rejoin the bloc, adding they realize it will take some time. Anna Cui from Matandang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
European Union threatens to sue its member states who introduce unilateral bans on Ukrainian grain. But Poland, Hungary, and Slovakia say they will continue to extend the temporary ban on Ukrainian grain imports. Poland insists they are protecting the interests of their own farmers. Hungary asserts EU is more concerned about Kyiv than its own member states. Analysts say the trio's defiance angered the bloc's leadership. The grain row also put an axe and divided the EU's economic relations.
The decision of the European Commission not to extend the temporary import ban is a serious problem. But the fact that the chairman of this body, Ursula von der Leyen, consulted on this topic not with the leaders of the EU countries, but with the president of Ukraine, Vladimir Zelensky, raises certain political issues. EU leaders are elected by the member states. They are accountable to them, and they should support them. But instead, the interests of a completely foreign third country are more important to them than the interests of EU member states.
We protect Polish farmers, and I can assure you that as long as the Law and Justice Party is in power, it will be consistent. Despite the attacks, we are guided by the interests of Polish farmers. The idea is for Ukrainian oligarchs to sell grain on the markets where they were supposed to sell, and not on the Polish market, because this harms Poland.
Russia has advocated for a reform of the United Nations, highlighting that the international body has struggled to adapt to the contemporary challenges of the world. RT's Caleb Maupin has the details.
It's high time to reform the existing global governance architecture as soon as possible. It hasn't met the requirements of the era for a long time. The expansion of the Security Council is also becoming more and more in demand, exclusively through the elimination of underrepresentation of the countries of the world majority, Asia, Africa, and Latin America.
Well, when the Russian foreign minister spoke before the UN General Assembly and to the countries gathered there, he emphasized that while there seems to be a one-sidedness when it comes to international governance institutions, and while the Western countries, led by the United States, continue to break their promises, betray their word, and present a dishonest narrative to the world, he's optimistic because the BRICS points the way forward, and he highlighted the increasing relationship between countries in the developing world and the alternative path of sustainable development that is offered by getting out of a situation where the Western countries have full dominance. Here is when he reflected on what gives him hope amid the negative things he was forced to discuss.
A new world order is being born right before our eyes. The main trend now is the desire of the world majority to strengthen their sovereignty and to defend national interests. They no longer want to live under someone's dictate. Such associations as BRICS and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization are on the rise, providing the countries of the global south with opportunities for joint development and for defending their rightful place in the emerging multipolar architecture.
Furthermore, he pointed out that the Western countries promised, both the Soviet officials and then the officials of Russia after the fall of the Soviet Union, that NATO would not expand eastward. And that promise was broken over and over and over again. NATO continued to expand. At this point, we can consider this. He referenced what has been said by the Russian president about an empire of lies.
The United States and its subordinate Western collective continue to breed conflicts that artificially divide humanity into hostile blocs and hinder the achievement achievement of common goals. They are doing everything to prevent the formation of a truly multipolar, just world order. They seek to force the world to play by their own narrow-minded rules. If someone gathers somewhere without them, makes friends without them or without their permission, they see it as a threat to their dominance. They are saying NATO's advance in the Asia-Pacific region is a blessing, but the expansion of BRICS is dangerous. The rejection of the principle of equality and total inability to negotiate are classics in the collective West's playbook.
I guess the point that really unified so much of what the Russian foreign minister had to say was that Russia is seeking stability and a resolution of conflicts in the world. It's seeking to bring the world closer together with trade and alternative mechanisms of global governance in which developing countries are given equal representation. That was much of what he had to say in his remarks, emphasizing that the attitude that is currently coming out of the White House and of Western institutions is not helping things in the world. But he did mention that that could soon change as elections are approaching in the United States.
Over 1,000 ethnic Armenians have fled Nagorno-Karabakh to seek refuge in Armenia in the days following Azerbaijan regaining control of the breakaway territory. Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev has provided reassurances that any Armenians residing in the region will have their rights and safety protected. However, years of conflict between the two nations have left profound scars and instilled fear within the population. The Armenian government anticipates an influx of about 120,000 civilians crossing into the country in the coming days or weeks, fearing the potential threat of ethnic cleansing.
The first convoys of injured people have left the besieged region of Nagorno-Karabakh, with displaced civilians following. Humanitarian organizations and the Armenian government said that dozens of people had been evacuated after Azerbaijan agreed to open the Lachin corridor that links the breakaway territory to the country. Meanwhile, other civilians have begged the Russian peacekeepers to take them across after Karabakh Armenian leaders accepted a surrender agreement following just 24 hours of fierce fighting and shelling. Armenia's prime minister warned earlier that the Armenians of Nagorno-Karabakh still face the danger of ethnic cleansing. The prime minister's stark warning comes just 2 days after Pashinyan said that Russia has taken responsibility for the fate of the population after Karabakh Armenian leaders accepted a Moscow-brokered surrender agreement with Azerbaijani forces. Dozens of trucks carrying 150 tons of humanitarian aid organized by the ICRC and the Russian Red Cross gained rare access to the region via the Lachin corridor controlled by Azerbaijani troops. Azerbaijan says the agreement shows it is serious about reintegrating the Karabakh Armenians after their armed forces turn in their weapons and the unrecognized government disbands.
Kosovo is accusing Serbia of supporting unidentified gunmen who are currently barricaded in a village located between the two countries.
Ne dënojmë këtë sulm kriminal e terrorist, krimi organizuar me mbështetje politike, financiare e logjistike nga Beogradi zyrtar, po e sulmon shtetin tonë. Në këtë betejë ne mbrojmë dhe zbatojmë ligjshmërinë, mbrojmë dhe ruajmë qytetarët pa dallim dhe Kosovën e pavarur.
Local police have been in a standoff with the assailants since yesterday, resulting in the deaths of one officer and 3 of approximately 30 attackers. Kosovo's President Vjosa Osmani has labeled the incident as a terrorist attack and is also placing blame on Serbia, asserting that the neighboring country is attempting to destabilize Kosovo. However, Serbia denies any involvement in the matter. Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić has shifted the blame onto Kosovo's Prime Minister Albin Kurti, claiming that the gunmen are Kosovo Serbs who are protesting against Kurti's administration.
A jedini krivac za sve ovo što se zbiva na severu Kosova i Metohije, jedini krivac, doduše ima malo i krivice onih koji ga pomažu u tome, a to je deo međunarodne zajednice, to je Albin Kurti.
Kosovo said Serbia have long been at odds with Serbia refusing to recognize Kosovo's independence and asserting sovereignty over ethnic Serbs in the territory.
France has made the decision to recall its ambassador and military forces from Niger, with plans for a complete withdrawal of all troops by the end of the year. This move follows weeks of pressure from the new military government in Niger and anti-French demonstrators protesting both in the capital and outside a French military base. Nigerian military leaders have welcomed this announcement, describing it as a historic moment that reflects the determination and will of the Nigerian people. Additionally, two other former French colonies, Mali and Burkina Faso, have also requested a departure of French troops from their respective countries.
House Speaker Anthony Rota praised Yaroslav Hunka as a Ukrainian hero at Canada's parliament, with Volodymyr Zelensky and Justin Trudeau attending and applauding. However, it was soon found out by historians that Hunka served in World War II as a member of the 14th Waffen Grenadier Division of the SS. The Speaker of Canada's House of Commons has since apologized for praising an individual who served in a Nazi unit during World War II. Simon Wiesenthal Center, a human rights group, said that Hunka's ties to the Nazi war machine were well documented. The recognition came following the visit to Parliament by Zelensky, who thanked Canada for its assistance in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Russia's RIA state news agency stated that Russia's ambassador to Canada, Oleg Stepanov, will send a letter to Trudeau regarding the incident, stating, and I quote, "The rise of anti-Semitism and Holocaust distortion is incredibly disturbing to be observed in Canada's House of Parliament."
Iran is seeking to revive a 2015 nuclear deal with the United States. This is after the country's Foreign Minister Hussein Amir Abdollahian told United Nations Chief Antonio Guterres of Tehran's commitment to salvage the deal in a meeting in New York. Dubbed the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or JCPOA, this restricted Tehran's nuclear industry in exchange of easing out economic sanctions imposed on the country. Washington, however, through former President Donald Trump, declared a unilateral withdrawal from the agreement. Trump describes the deal as fundamentally flawed. In 2021, the parties engaged in talks to revive the deal but had reached an impasse. Meanwhile, Iran confirmed that it had held indirect talks with the U.S. and Oman on the nuclear deal. Earlier this week, Washington and Tehran engaged in a prisoner swap, as well as unfreezing billions worth of assets in Iranian oil revenue in South Korea.
White House aspirant Donald Trump beats United States President Joe Biden in the latest 2024 presidential race. The latest poll shows Trump securing a 10-point lead over Biden. Trump garnered 52% compared to Biden, who managed to get 42% of the total votes. Respondents are concerned about Biden's leadership, particularly in economics. They also cited Biden's age and immigration policies as negative factors. Trump said the poll result is a giant comeback for the United States. Up next, dozens of Somalians have died after a truck exploded in a security checkpoint. Pamplona's historic running of the bulls claims one life. And UN says we have to change the way we use plastics. Mata ng Agila International will be back. Please stay tuned.
Netizens, alam niyo naman, Ali Soto po! Special guest ako, maglutong dasa this Saturday! Kami ay magluluto ng mga special na mga lutuin from Vietnam! Abangan niya, huwag kayong mawawala! Saturday, 11 a.m. I'll see ya!
Magandang araw, magandang araw, magandang araw. lalo na kung si Ara lagi mong kasama. Magandang araw, magandang araw.
The death toll in a fire at a golf ball factory in Taiwan has risen to 10. 4 of the victims are firefighters. Julian Bukayan reports.
Taiwanese media reports about 100 people suffered injuries in the golf ball factory fire, which broke out Friday afternoon at the Launch Technologies plant. The company is a major supplier of golf balls worldwide. An explosion caused part of the building to collapse, trapping firefighters and workers under the rubble. It took firefighters until the next day to extinguish the blaze. Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen visited the scene Saturday morning and offered condolences to the victims' families. Later, she visited the morgue to pay her respects to the victims and visited the injured at a hospital. A fire department official speculated chemical peroxide stored in the factory could have caused the explosions. Julian Bukayan from Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
The death toll now stands at 21 after a truck blew up in a security checkpoint in a town in central Somalia. Rescue crews recovered more bodies Sunday from the debris. The death toll could go even higher as crews continue to sift through the rubble in the town of Beledweyne. Officials say several people are still missing. Some 52 people suffered injuries in the explosion. Officials say 20 are in critical condition. The blast Saturday destroyed nearby buildings, leaving the victims trapped under broken bricks, concrete, and metal. There is no immediate claim of responsibility for the bombing incident. It comes after Somalia's government admitted to several significant setbacks in its fight against Al-Qaeda-linked militants. The town has been the center of the government's latest offensive against the rebels.
An explosion at an illegal fuel depot in the West African country of Benin has left at least 35 people dead. Another 20 people suffered injuries in the blast on the weekend near the country's border with Nigeria. Rani Bayuga reports.
According to local media, the explosion victims included 1 child. 10 of those injured are in serious condition in hospital. The explosion erupted in a warehouse where illegally smuggled fuel had been stored. It is a spot where cars, motorbikes, and other vehicles come to fill up. The blast sent flames and a cloud of black smoke up into the sky, leaving dozens of charred bodies at the site. There is no indication as to what sparked the blast. An investigation is underway to determine the cause and any criminal liability. For years, cheap Nigerian gasoline has been sold illegally in Benin. Rani Bayuga for Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Wildfires on the Italian island of Sicily have forced the evacuation of hundreds of people and claimed 2 lives. Some 800 firefighters on the front lines fought to control the flames. Estela Dominique reports.
Sicilian authorities say a 42-year-old woman died while attempting to save her horses. She is believed to have become disoriented from the heat and smoke and slipped into a gully. The woman had been with her father and brothers at the time. A 60-year-old man died fleeing his home. Officials evacuated about 700 people from a hotel Friday night. They returned several hours later after the danger passed. There is no indication of what might have sparked the blazes. Estela Dominique from Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
A huge sinkhole on a major highway in Sweden has swallowed a bus and several cars. Police say 3 people suffered injuries. Elise Danielle has more details.
Swedish officials blame a landslide for causing the sinkhole. At least 4 cars and a bus skidded off the road in the wee hours of Saturday morning. Rescue crews, with the aid of helicopters, managed to help people out of their vehicles. The landslide also damaged several buildings and caved in the roof of a restaurant. An investigation has been opened into possible links to a nearby construction site where crews had been blasting. Emergency officials say they cannot rule out further landslides. The highway, which connects Sweden with Norway, will be closed for several weeks. Elise Daniel for Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
A tragic incident has occurred during a running of the bulls in eastern Spain, resulting in the death of a man who was gored by one of the bulls. The victim was rushed to the hospital after the incident, but unfortunately succumbed to his wounds. Another man was also gored in the leg by the same bull last week, although he survived the incident. The running of the bulls has seen a number of injuries involving both spectators and participants in recent years.
Ahead of the holidays, the Canadian government is reaching out to big groceries in the country to come up with a price stabilization scheme. This amid inflation impacting households across the nation. In Toronto, Joshua Santillana reports.
These days, it is no longer a surprise the prices of food and grocery items keep rising and never seem to show signs of decreasing. According to Statistics Canada, the country's current inflation rate is at 4%, which has seen an increase from 2.8% last July. This has clearly affected the prices of food and grocery items, which continues to hit Canadian pockets hard. Prices of grocery items have risen to 8.5% in July. In light of this, Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland and Industry Minister François-Philippe Champagne met up with the CEOs of Canada's major grocery chains Monday to discuss measures that will help stabilize grocery prices. These major companies, Loblaw, Metro, Empire, Walmart, and Costco, must develop concrete plans to stabilize prices. However, as the CEOs mentioned no promises that will lead to actually lowering the prices, as they say prices fluctuate every week. Canada is looking into what France and Britain are doing in terms of this similar crucial issue. Their governments have mandated price cuts and controls over staple food and items for 3 months. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is calling to the major Canadian grocery companies to stabilize prices by Thanksgiving. In failing to do so, the federal government will take further action, which includes imposing more tax measures on them. In Toronto, Ontario, Joshua Santillana from Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Problems sparked in the podcasting world after comedian Theo Von released a statement accusing the podcast company Cast Media of stealing ad revenue from their creators. Comedian and podcaster Theo Von ignited X last week in a viral video where he talked about his experiences with Cast Media, a podcast company responsible in producing and putting advertisements in various shows. The Theo Von video, which has now garnered more than 1 million views, was specifically targeted towards Cast Media's founder and CEO Colin Thompson.
It felt real dirty, and it felt like just no respect for podcasting, no respect for the work that we had done.
Vaughn has directly called out Thompson for allegedly owing multiple podcast creators, himself included, of over $4 million in ad revenue. This was backed up by those who have also left the company for the same reason.
I know what it feels like to be taken advantage of, and I wouldn't do that to these people. I wouldn't do that to Colin Thompson. I wouldn't do that to Cast Media. And so I say this just because I don't want this guy taking advantage of anybody else.
He also explained that Thompson has informally offered to repay the creators with a partial amount in cash and the rest of it in stocks through Cast's newly acquired podcast company, Podcast One.
I mean, I have a voice. And a lot of other people are forced into these bad deals because they're afraid to speak up. They're afraid to speak up, man.
Vaughn, together with fellow podcasters, rejected the offer and are now processing their lawsuits against the company.
Marine biologists warn that a mysterious disease that kills sea urchins could put the corals in the Red Sea in peril. That's because the long-spined creatures eat algae that can suffocate corals. Bernadette Regini tells us more.
Biologists first heard reports in January of a sea urchin species rapidly dying off in Israel's Red Sea resort of Eilat. At first, they blamed it on local pollution. But within 2 weeks, the spiny invertebrates began dying further down the coast. Scrambling to find the cause, scientists watched with growing alarm as the mass mortality spread south through the Red Sea. Researchers have determined the disease affects 2 kinds of sea urchins, while other species remained unharmed. A similar mass mortality hit sea urchins in the Caribbean. Scientists speculate the disease may have arrived in the Red Sea by ships whose ballast water carries pathogens and exotic species. Stopping the die-off in the seas is impossible. Instead, biologists are building up a stock of the urchins which can be released into the Red Sea once the current threat has passed. Bernadette Regini for Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The head of the UN's Environment Program says we have to change the way we use plastics. Inger Anderson says recycling isn't the answer. Thomas I. Likeness has that story.
This plastic waste I'm showing you is in a landfill in Nairobi, Kenya. But it could be from anywhere in the world. We're being overrun by the stuff. Every aspect of our lives has a plastic component. Much of the food we eat is packaged with it. It's in the clothes we wear, the cars we drive, the electronic gadgets we use. Medical care would be impossible without the use of plastic. UN Environmental Chief Inger Anderson says the annual production of plastics has more than doubled in the past 2 decades and will triple by 2060 if nothing changes. But what do we do with plastic when we're finished using it?
We cannot recycle our way out of this mess. So we have to think alternative packaging as well. And of course, waste management.
Anderson says only 9% of plastics get reused. The UN hopes to finalize an international treaty on plastic pollution by the end of next year. Anderson says one of the aims is to get rid of as many single-use plastic items as possible.
And what are the best levers for overall reduction of single-use items, which could be more multiple use?
Anderson says we also need to rethink the design of many products, as well as reducing the overall supply of new raw polymers. But we also have to consider human behavior. Now, back in 1959, Swedish engineer Sten Gustaf Thulin invented the plastic shopping bag. Now, Thulin was not an environmental villain. Quite the opposite. He wanted a reusable alternative to paper bags. Paper bags at the time were considered bad for the environment because of the number of trees used to make the paper. Looking at this landfill today, you can see how that worked out. We have a long way to go before the plastic pollution problem is solved. Thomas I. Likeness for Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Coming right up, Canadians reach a deal with Ford in the middle of the UAW strike. NASA's OSIRIS-REx capsule carrying large asteroid samples lands on Earth. And the Writers Guild of America and film and television studios reach a deal effectively ending the 146-day strike. Catch more news in business, tech, sports, and entertainment when we return.
Nag-offer ako ng trabaho kay Sanem. Sana tanggapin niya. Meron na siyang trabaho.
Sa maiksing panahon na lang.
Panahon na nga ba para matupad ang dream ni Sanem?
Ang ganda ng office mo.
At si Chan. Di na malaman ang
Sana huwag ka
gagawin.
namang umalis. Huwag kang tumakas,
Sir
please.
Chan.
Ano ba? Nag-iisip ka ba, ha?
Pasensya na kung gusto kong umalis. Sorry kasi lahat ng gawin ko baliwala sa'yo.
Parang init at lamig itong sina Chan at Sanet.
Tanggapin mo ba yung offer niya?
Sisisantihin siya bago pa matapos yung natitirang araw niya dito sa office.
Pagkakataon na naman ni Pauline tumagdag sa gulo.
Kailangan palalain pa natin ang away nilang dalawa. Anong plano nyo, ha?
Daydreamer. Monday to Friday, 7:30 p.m. Dito lang sa Net 25. The U.S. Federal Reserve's decision to hold interest rates this week has triggered a flurry of market activity. New York correspondent Bobby Soriano reports on the impact of that decision.
On Wednesday, the Federal Reserve declared their decision to maintain interest rates, with Wall Street stocks falling and the dollar strengthening on the announcement. The move was expected but viewed as a hawkish pause because Fed Chairman Jerome Powell hinted at potential rate hikes later this year. This delayed an immediate increase in mortgage and loan costs. Despite a positive assessment of the U.S. economy and labor market, indicating the possibility of averting a recession, the pause also suggests that interest rates may stay higher for a longer duration. Analysts predict further rate hikes, with forecasts projecting one more hike in 2023 and only 2 interest rate cuts in 2024. Inflation has decreased but remains above the Fed's target, prompting consideration of additional policy actions. The global financial landscape is being closely watched, as various central banks are set to make rate decisions, including those in Britain, Switzerland, Sweden, Norway, and Turkey. The Bank of England's expected rate hike is now uncertain due to unexpectedly low UK inflation. Following this, attention turns to the Bank of Japan, where officials are hinting at a shift from their long-standing policy of not raising interest rates. In New York, Bobby Soriano, Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
The Canadian Auto Workers Union reaches a tentative agreement with Ford. The deal averts a strike as negotiations continue in Detroit. Arlene Ocampo reports.
Unifor says its deal covers more than 5,600 employees at Canadian Ford facilities poised for a potential walkout. Unifor represents Canadian auto workers. The tentative agreement still must be ratified by Unifor members. The accord, however, contrasts the situation in the U.S. About 12,700 United Auto Workers, or UAW members, are still on strike at 3 U.S. plants. This after failing to agree on a new contract with the big 3 automakers, Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis. Thousands of additional employees were sent home through temporary layoffs. Automakers characterize it as a ripple effect from the strikes. Stellantis announced layoffs potentially involving more than 350 workers in Ohio and Indiana. Ford has also temporarily laid off 600 workers. Union officials say their goal has been a strong contract for workers and they hope to avoid a strike. But the stoppage is necessary to achieve a stronger package as workers combat elevated inflation. Arlene Ocampo from Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
China's electric vehicle or EV makers display their model and concept cars at the Beijing Expo. Dubbed the 2023 World Intelligent Connected Vehicles Conference, the exhibit showcases various designs of electric cars. China's Ministry of Public Security notes that in 2022, the country's new energy vehicle ownership lies at 13.1 million units. Center for Climate Energy Solutions says that China is the world's biggest producer of greenhouse gases, following the United States. Driverless cabs are plying the streets of Beijing, picking up passengers in the Chinese capital. Tech giant Baidu launched the service this week. Philip Toledo has the details.
Passengers in these taxis don't have to worry about tipping the driver. There is none. Those needing a cab simply order one using an app on their mobile phones. They are then picked up by a brand new SUV. It's equipped with electronics and sensors and topped by a spinning radar antenna. The vehicles are limited to a specific area on the outskirts of Beijing, and they can be remotely controlled if need be. Autonomous vehicles are nothing new in China, but until this past week, they required an employee to be in the driver's seat to take over the wheel when required. China's major tech players have launched autonomous vehicle projects in several major cities. Philip Toledo for Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
The largest sample ever collected from an asteroid has landed on Earth. The space rock landed Sunday in the Utah desert. JC Yumul reports.
What you see here is the end of a 7-year mission as this capsule drops to Earth. It contains a sample from the asteroid Bennu. Once on the ground, scientists examined the capsule to make sure it remained intact. They then took it by helicopter to a nearby clean room. Today, the sample heads to Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas for additional study. The mission began in 2016 when NASA launched a space probe. 4 years later, it landed on Bennu, where it collected about 250 grams of dust from the asteroid. The space capsule logged more than 6 billion kilometers in its round-trip journey. JC Yumul for Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Over to the 2023 Asian Games, find out the victors of day 1 of the tournament. Vin Pascua has a score.
First up tonight, meet the youngest member of Team Philippines, skateboarder Mazel Paris Alagao, who has earned 7th place in the women's park final. In her first ever appearance in the Asian Games, she qualified after scoring 56.96 in her second run in the qualifiers. The 9-year-old Alagao then got her best score of 52.85 in her first run before garnering 24.83 and 24.50 in her second and third runs. Japan's Kusaki Hinano was the runaway winner of the event, and China's Li Hu-Huan takes home the silver. Meanwhile, wushu artist Jones Liabres Inso claimed bronze in the men's Taijiquan and Taijijan all-round. Inso totaled 19.486 points to finish third overall in the 18-player competition. He placed second in the Taijiquan with a score of 9.746 before ending up in fourth in the Taijijan with 9.740. China's Gao Haonan took gold while Hui Tak-yan Samuel of Hong Kong grabbed the silver. The bronze medal is a massive improvement for Inso, who finished 14 in the men's Taijiquan and Taijijan all-round in 2018. And Taekwondo Jean Patrick King Perez delivered the Philippines' first medal in the Asian Games as he claimed bronze in the men's individual pumse on Sunday. Perez guaranteed himself a medal by reaching the semifinals, where he bowed to Chinese Taipei bet Ma Yun-jong. Patrick King posted 6.91 average after recording 7.64 points in recognized and 6.18 points in freestyle. Ma meanwhile finished with a silver medal, while Korea's Kang Wan-jin captured gold. Reporting for Sports, Vin Pascua Formata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The Writers Guild of America and Film and Television Studios reached a deal on Sunday night, ending a 146-day strike. Stephanie Mayo has the scoop.
Studios and the Writers Guild of America, or WGA, reached a tentative deal on Sunday night. The deal includes most of what the Hollywood writers had demanded from studios, including increases in royalty payments for streaming content and guarantees that artificial intelligence, or AI, will not affect writers' compensation or credits. The Writers Guild, which represents more than 11,000 screenwriters, will now suspend all picketing. But the end of the writers' strike doesn't mean Hollywood is back at work. The writers' union leadership continues to encourage WGA members to join the actors' picket lines, which will resume on Tuesday. Tens of thousands of actors remain on strike, and studios and entertainment companies are now struggling with stock prices for Disney, Warner Brothers Discovery, and Paramount Global significantly dropping. Stephanie Mayo for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Let's head over to Papua New Guinea as our Net25 team gets a first look at the newest designs showcased in this year's Fashion Week. Eko Orteleza Quinola reports.
I am here at Hilton Hotel to witness the Paradise Fashion Runway. Local designers and their culture-inspired creations are the highlight of the Paradise Runway and Papua New Guinea Fashion Week. Director and founder Philly Kilegay calls the show Future of the Culture under the theme Voyager. 15 aspiring designers showcase the quality and authenticity of Papua New Guinea garments, accessories, and headdresses. The show aims to inspire locally and international markets to patronize Papua New Guinea-made clothing, arts, and craft.
And I want us to acknowledge that this is still quite young here in Papua New Guinea as an industry.
Spectators see how clothes move once models wear each designer's masterpieces.
PNG fashion, very authentic, very original. We've got very diverse culture and it shows in all the work of the designers.
PNG Fashion Week, it's an awesome concept. It's a very young industry, but it's growing. And to see the amount of, and the work that's put into the designs that come out each year, I am really looking forward to, the years to come. So well done to PNG Fashion Week, Philly and the team. And well done to all the designers, and how good were the models, man. The gents and the ladies have done really well.
Applause surround the runway. The show ended with the announcement of winners and awarding of prizes.
I didn't think this would be able to come out of a cultural background with the designs that we've tried to merge with the modern ones. I'm not a fashion expert or anything, but I think it's pretty amazing.
The amount of talent from the designers alone are just so amazing. It's interesting to watch and see how it unfolds. And so I'm so impressed.
Good range of display tonight. Amazing talent.
From Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea, Eko Hortaleza Quinola, Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Rio de Janeiro launches its first international biennial art and technology exhibition. Hosted by the country's Museum of Tomorrow, the exhibit is open until October 29, 2023. The event showcases 70 works from 30 countries, immersing audiences in arts incorporated with augmented and virtual realities. According to the museum's management, the event is divided into two parts, presenting new aesthetics and artificial intelligence's super creativity. They add that the exhibit is free for all ages, as it aims to provide a great experience of social transformations promoted by technologies and art.
And to start the week, here's a quote from French novelist and literary critic Marcel Proust. Let us be grateful to people who make us happy. They are the charming gardeners who make our souls blossom.
Sometimes we're so consumed in our independence that we forget to be thankful for the people around us, because we wouldn't be who we are if it weren't for those people.
That is so true now more than ever. But as much as I'm grateful for people who make me happy, I want to be equally grateful for being the reason other people are happy.
Well, you're the reason I'm happy, Nina.
You're the reason I'm happy too.
And that's a wrap for tonight's news. Catch the latest updates on our social media channels. I am Gianna Llanes.
I am Nina Richie Alagao-Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
For choosing Mata ng Agila International, your trusted news source, connecting you to the world and on point with stories from around the globe. Follow, like, and subscribe to @Net25 TV.